So I was born in a village with no running water and no electricity out in the southeastern desert of Iran. And I was extremely fortunate because the government of Iran wanted to execute my whole family. So as a result, we escaped the country, went to Turkey as illegal immigrants, and lived in a refugee camp for several years until we got our political asylum to come to the United States. And the reason earlier I said that I was so fortunate is because suddenly we had access to the American education system, access to a lot of opportunity. And I didn't really understand the culture, I didn't understand the language, I didn't have any friends really, so I threw myself into math and science, taught myself quantum mechanics and differential equations in middle school, as one does, and began working at NASA at the age of 16 at Goddard Space Flight Center. I started my first company in college, started another company in my late 20s that I sold, and I had a chance to go back to the village where I was born, Zenzurun, after I sold my first company. And the reason I share this is because it was a pretty profound experience for me. Obviously, I don't want to misstate things. Iran has a lot of large cities, and I have cousins that are professionals, but that village where I was born, when I went back, I ran into all the kids that I used to play with when I was 4. And now we're all adults. But they were all illiterate. They were sheep herders and goat herders. And they spent 3 hours trying to convince me that the earth is in the center of the universe. That was like a visceral punch in the gut for me because we weren't that different, right? We shared ethnicity, we shared a background. These guys are my second, third, fourth cousins. And so we shared genetic code, yet we lived these radically different lives. And it made me question some things. It made me question how many people live or are born in villages or in sub-Saharan Africa or in refugee camps who are robbed of the opportunity to impact their communities and the world around them. So we're here in Davos during the World Economic Forum to discuss solving for the Sustainable Development Goals. And look, the reality is we're behind. We're very behind, and there's a lot of work to do over the next 10 years. But all is not lost. I love a good underdog story, and we have a lot of opportunity. I'm confident that we can get back on track and achieve all of the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030 by making the right investments in technology and investments in actually making the world a better place. So the question is, how do we make investments in technologies that enable us to get 100x returns while simultaneously having a massive impact on over 1 billion people? All the data obviously has shown that when you do impact investments, they actually perform better oftentimes than traditional investments. So that's what I want to talk to you guys about today. Right now, 6.6% of the global population has a college degree. Now, we can have a conversation about whether a college degree is the right KPI to use. I would probably agree that it's not, but it's the closest one we have so far, so let's put that aside for the time being. But the question then is, what would happen if we 10x the number of people that have college degrees? What happens if we 10x the number of engineers and scientists and doctors and philosophers and researchers and coders? What happens when we stop squandering over 90% of the intellectual capital of the human race? I believe that is the path to solving all of the SDGs and all the most intractable problems that we face as a human race. So that's what I want to chat with you guys about today. The Sustainable Development Goal number 4, education, underpinning all of the SDGs. So that's what we're solving at Ahura AI. So what we did is we invented technology that enables people to learn 3 to 5 times faster than traditional education for 1/10 of the price. The way we do this is we personalize education and training across the entire chain. So we collect over 10,000 biometric data points every second off of every user while they're on their computer or on their smartphone to identify the optimal way to deliver content to an individual based on their unique needs. It turns out that depending on a person's nutritional intake, their sleep patterns, their activity level, their dopamine withdrawal, even the last fight they had with their significant other, it has an impact on what's the optimal way for them to pay attention to content, absorb the material, and retain it. And over the past 2 years, from all the research that we've done, our research suggests that even when you're watching a video, the accent of the person speaking, their tempo, their tone, their race, their gender, even their choices that they make for their clothing, the background color, all have an impact on your ability to absorb that information and retain it longer. So by analyzing this massive data set, we can then figure out how to send the right data or the right content to the right person in the right format at the right time. Now, there's been a lot of conversation this week at a lot of different panels about the fourth industrial revolution. I think everybody here is fairly aware of this. We're about to lose somewhere between 800 million to 2 billion jobs internationally over the next 5 to 10 years. These are all numbers from McKinsey and BCG and Gartner and CB Insights and others. Now, I'm a student of history, and historically, in the past 3 industrial revolutions, we've been able to invent new jobs for people to do. The only difference is in previous industrial revolutions, we had 1 to 2 generations to retrain the population, and this time we have only 5 to 10 years. So how do we solve that problem? So here in Davos, during the World Economic Forum, I want to officially announce that Ahura AI is coming out of stealth mode and launching our beta product. We're launching with a handful of technology companies in San Francisco and New York. And they're rolling out our technology to retrain their existing employees who are being replaced by artificial intelligence and automation. They're retraining them for other jobs within the same organizations, or alternatively, providing this as a severance package to retrain people that they're laying off en masse so that they can land on their feet. What we're doing is we're right now taking additional people that can jump on the wait list for $100, refundable deposit for folks that want to be part of this journey with us and want to be early adopters. Now, I thought about bringing a truck and shattering a couple windows with a steel baseball, but that's already been done. Great marketing, though. It's fantastic. But for the folks that do decide to join our wait list, in spite of the lack of Cybertruck on stage, the folks that do, the corporations and those watching, will be able to lock in and grandfather into amazing pricing for the duration of the relationship and be part of the foundational group of organizations that start. I want to make another announcement as well. So Ahura AI is committed to, for every license that we sell to large corporates, we're giving at least 1 free license to members of underserved communities globally. So we are announcing here our first humanitarian effort. We're rolling out 30,000 free licenses to 25 to 35-year-old people in Ghana and Nigeria who are suffering from this massive youth unemployment problem that we have in Africa right now. So we're partnering with the Africa 10 initiative, founded by Kojo Annan and his late father, former Secretary General of the United Nations, Kofi Annan, to address this issue. Now, I'm looking forward to standing before you a year from now at the World Economic Forum in 2021 and show you the data around how we were able to have a massive impact in this community, or these 2 communities in Africa. And next year, I'm going to ask fellow members of the World Economic Forum to help support us to roll out this technology to 3 million Africans to enable them to be able to learn the skill sets they need to get jobs remotely working at Western corporations. We have another partnership with an organization called Hugo to find these folks jobs immediately after their training as well, to build up these communities from the ground up. Now, there's another conversation that I want to have with you guys right now that is very near and dear to my heart, and it's a conversation around ethics in artificial intelligence and AI. Now, I understand that there's a lot of perspectives from different parts of the world about data agency, data ownership, and what we should be doing with this data that we collect. Now, personally, I have very strong feelings about this. I think that if we're not careful with artificial intelligence and data, if we enable this to be used for propaganda from government or advertising to sell toxic products, we are at a risk of causing permanent damage to many of our global democratic institutions. And so there are a number of organizations that are doing very good work on this. My friend Brittany Kaiser with the Own Your Data movement, my friend and advisor Jim Clark, who runs the International Congress for the Governance of Artificial Intelligence, as well as the Omidyar network, who I'm engaged with around the Race to the Top initiative, around a framework for the ethical use of data and artificial intelligence. I highly recommend that you look into and support these organizations as we carry on this conversation around what needs to happen with the data that we collect. Now, I believe that we, as members of the World Economic Forum, we as entrepreneurs and investors also have a responsibility. Because our responsibility is every time we vote using our dollars or using our attention, are we investing in organizations that are using this data in unethical ways, or are we investing in organizations that are ethical at the core and protect privacy and data for individuals around the world? So we're making a third commitment here today at Ahura AI that with all of the data that we're collecting, 10,000 biometric data points every second that's connected to how people learn in the feedback loops around testing and quizzes and tests, that we will not use any of this data. We're making a legally binding commitment that we will not sell any of this data to governments to be used for propaganda, nor will we enable any of this data to be used by corporations for advertising unless we have explicit agreements with consumers wherein they have full 100% agency around how their data is used and whom it's sold to, and simultaneously, they are able to earn the majority of the revenue that comes from the use of their data. And I call on other tech companies, other leaders to make a similar pledge so that we can move the world forward and not have these issues. So, my name is Bryan Talebi. If you want to be part of our journey, feel free to reach out to me, feel free to go out to our website. But now is the time for bold action. Now is the time for radical innovation. Now is the time for us to invest our resources in creating a world that we can be proud of leaving for our children and the future generations. Thank you.